Tizkei b'nechamat Zion, Kahal Kadosh. I was asked this afternoon to speak about a topic that was given to me. The topic is called Midat Vatranut, the characteristic trait called Vitur, Vatranut, Levater. What is this concept? What is this idea? To be a Mevater. The way I understand it simply, somehow Chachamim, our rabbis, the Torah demands from us a certain ability to yield to the other person, to forego one's rights, to relinquish what belongs to us, to bend, to give over, to surrender. Something that inherently is yours and you own it, but somehow to give it over to the other. This is the simple interpretation to what it is to be a mevater. I must explain it to you through 3 different episodes so you'll get it very clear. The first is a story that was told about the great Rabbi Akiva Eger. He was a genius, Gaon. We study his books in the yeshiva, Gilyon HaShas, the Hidushim, the Teshuvot. When he was a young man, he was a prodigy then. He got engaged. The custom was to go to the father-in-law's town. On Shabbat, all the rabbis would gather, and the young Hatan would say Divrei Torah, words of Torah, to impress them. Sure enough, he went, and everybody was waiting for a big dissertation of the great Gaon. And he passed. He said, I have nothing to say today. They started to ask him questions on Torah, and he gave very quick, one-word answers. All the great rabbis turned to the potential father-in-law of Rabbi Akiva Eger. They said, you got duped. He's an ignoramus. He doesn't know any Torah. He can't even say anything. Rabbi Akiva Eger turned to his potential father-in-law and says, wait till tomorrow morning and we'll convene. Sure enough, the next day, on the Sunday, Rabbi Akiva gave a 4.5 hour long dissertation on the Divrei Torah that dazzled all the rabbis that were in attendance. Clearly, he showed his strength. So when they asked the great rabbi, why couldn't you do that yesterday? He says, yesterday in the synagogue, there was another Hatan. There was another groom. And clearly, he's not as well-spoken or well-versed or well-learned. And I knew that if I would say my derash, so it would cast him in a bad light, and therefore they would question if they made the right decision about him. So I gave up. I gave up my right to speak, and I forgoed it, even risking the consequence. Now that's a classic example of vitur, because every Hatan, it's his right to speak. He doesn't have to make calculations. Is there another Hatan in the shul? This happens once in a lifetime. This is my moment to give the derash. The great rabbi decided at that moment to give up something that every Hatan has, the famous speech in front of the rabbis. This is vitur. He gave up kavod, he gave up his glory and his honor and his moment. I read in the Gemara yet a different type of vitur. Everybody knows about the great personality of Tanakh. Of course, that's the man called Iyov. Iyov was a great tzaddik. The Gemara says on Iyov, one of his great characteristic traits was, Iyov Vatran b'mamoneh hava. He was a Vatran. He was one that yielded and relinquished when it came to his money. The way I understand that Gemara is, maybe like we say today that there's some generous people that they tell the person that did some work for them, keep the change. They're not so particular in asking them for every cent. And the person did work. He's not a rich man anyway. Maybe we'll call it a big tipper or generous tipper. That's what the Gemara says Iyov was. And they say it in the greatest of compliments and accolades. Iyov vatran b'mamoneh. He was willing to give up his money. Now again, it's his money. The money belongs to him. It doesn't belong to the worker. The worker got paid. But he was mevater. He took something that belonged to him and he yielded it to the other. That's the second example. Vatranut, yielding when it comes to money. The third example is not from Tanakh, nor is it from the Gemara. It's actually a story about my own rabbi, who was called Baruch ben Haim, who was the chief rabbi of our great Syrian community in New York. And the rabbi, in his older years, clearly had yortzeit for both his mother and his father. He was the chief rabbi of the synagogue. He actually read the Sefer Torah. He would be able to demand any aliyah of the Torah that he wanted. Certainly the aliyah on the week of the Shabbat of the yortzeit. But amazingly enough, always when he had the yortzeit, he would always give it to somebody else in the synagogue. And he never went up to the Sefer Torah. And we couldn't understand it. It's a big mitzvah to go up to the Torah, to make the hashkavah, to make the prayer for the deceased, to say the Kaddish. This is something that every child is waiting for, to give it to his parents, to elevate the souls of the deceased. And the great Rabbi Haim Baruch alav shalom, he was willing to yield the aliyah for his own parents' yortzeit and give it to a student of his who that Shabbat always had yortzeit for one of his parents as well. And nobody knew that the rabbi even had yortzeit, but they just knew that every year at this time, this student goes up. Only later on it was understood that the rabbi was giving the aliyah up. And when they asked him, Rabbi, but your parents, he would say the following: why am I asking for the aliyah? Because I want my parents to have an elevation. By me foregoing it and giving it to the next guy, my parents have even a greater elevation. So if I'm interested in doing it for my parents, they benefited better. Here the mitzvah is his. It belongs to him. He has a right. He's the rabbi. He's the chief rabbi. It's his shul. He's in charge of the aliyot. Why would somebody give it up? This is the difficulty in understanding this midah of Vatranut. Why should I give up my prestige? Why should I give up my money? Why should I give up my mitzvah? I have a great difficulty understanding what's expected and why it's expected from us. But the problem becomes compounded. It becomes twice as difficult when I try to explain this midah to those that were raised in the United States of America and maybe some other countries as well. You'll have a difficult time explaining it to them. Why? Because today the world is addicted and is consumed with rights. Wherever we go, we're told what our rights are. A customer walks into a store to purchase something. There's a big sign, consumer rights. We get on an airplane. They give us a card, passengers' rights. Today, animals have rights. A criminal that's convicted of the worst crimes, before he's convicted, the first thing they tell him, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to be represented in a court. You have a right for a jury. Today, unfortunately, anybody that leads any sort of way of life, they give him rights and they give him certain privileges. And that's all we're asking today. In our countries, everybody asks, what am I entitled to? What's coming to me? What do I deserve? Now go explain to those addicts of rights and go tell them you have to be mevatir. What are you talking about? We're trying to create more rights and privileges for ourselves today. We're trying to make life more easier for what's coming to us, and all of a sudden Judaism comes along and says the total opposite. Not only don't take what doesn't belong to you, but what does belong to you, give it away. And the modern person will come along and say, but it's my body, and it's my money, and it's my honor, and it's my mitzvah. Why should I surrender? And to be honest with you, I grapple with the same question as I'm preparing this Dirasha. And for the first time, I had to sit long and hard and think for a minute, what's the midah? Why is this demanded of us? With great help and siyata d'shmaya, divine assistance, without a doubt, I came across a sefer that's written by one of the great Sephardi rabbis called Hida, Rabbi Haim Yosef David Azulai. In one of his books, it's called Midbar Kedemot. There he has one line on Midat Vatranut. And he says, Vatranut misitra de Kedusha. He says, this midah comes from the side of holiness, of Kedusha. Now, when we hear the word Kedusha, we think of the most lofty of things. Kedusha is something that's in the highest echelons. And the Hidah puts this midah in the highest area, in the Kodesh. Sitra de Kedusha. And I was trying to understand, where's the Kedusha? Kedusha to us is somebody that's dipping in a mikveh, somebody that's wrapped in his talet and immersed in all sorts of Kabbalistic prayers and so on and so forth. That's the way we think of Kedusha. But somebody that relinquishes and somebody that surrenders and somebody that yields and somebody that cedes, Kedusha. In our vernacular, we call that somebody that's a loser, somebody that's meek, somebody that's getting stepped on. And the Hidah says, no, you're looking at it all wrong. Sitra de Kedusha. Birshut, with the permission of the Kahal, I'd like to say an interpretation to what the Hidah means. Those that ever read the great book of Rav Moshe Haim Lutzato, called Mesilat Yesharim, Path of the Just, there he tells us about a certain midah, a certain measure called Kedusha. And he says those that master Kedusha will end up reaching the highest level that he has in the book. And he calls that level midat ha'anava, humility. Kedusha mivi'ah lideh anava. Kedusha brings to humility. And it came to me. Everybody can understand the importance of being humble. That's something we can appreciate. Even if you're living in modern society, all of us would agree that arrogance and haughtiness and those people that are self-absorbed with themselves, it's not nice, it's disgusting, it's a bad trait. That anybody can understand. And we could all value the importance of being humble and totally effaced and modest and low-key. Humility in our religion is one of the most important midot. After all, when God was looking for a leader, who did he choose? Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. And our Torah says the highest praise of our leader, V'ha'ish Moshe Anav. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble of all men. And we're always told, be humble. When we were in yeshiva, they always taught us lessons. Humility is a very important virtue. But what do you want me to do? How do I put this midah that is required of me if I want to emulate our great master Moshe and if I want to emulate God Almighty, who clearly is also humble? I'd like to make one point to show you how important humility is to God Almighty. When he was choosing a mountain to give the Torah, he forgot all the tall, majestic mountains, and he chose a small hill, Har Sinai, because it's inconspicuous, because it's modest. The modest leader, Moshe, on the modest mountain, Har Sinai. So you see, God is attracted to humility. Even God's holy name, the Yud Ke Vav Ke. The great rabbis ask, why did God choose those letters for his name? God could make any of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet his name, but he specifically chose the Yud and the He and the Vav. Of course, the He is doubled. The explanation the Mefarshim say is, because these are the smallest letters in the Hebrew alphabet. What do you mean to say? I'll explain it to you. Take the Yud. Let's speak it out. Yud. Yud, Vav, Dalid. Yud. Yud equals 10. Vav, Dalid equals 10. So the full letter, we call that milui. The fill-in plus the letter equals 20. Take the He Aleph. How do you say He Aleph. He Aleph is 6. You want to be generous? Say He Yud. It's 15. Take the Vav. Vav is Vav, Vav. How do you say the word Vav? Vav, Vav, Vav. 12. You want to be generous? Vav Aleph Vav. It's 13. No letter in the Hebrew alphabet is as small in number as those 3 letters. Take an Aleph, for example. Aleph, Lamed, Peh. Aleph. Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, Peh is 80. That's 111. Bet. Bet is 2, Yud is 10, Taf is 400. That's 412. Gimal, Dalet is over 400. Every single letter, big numbers. God chose the smallest numerical numbers, the Yud, the He, and the Vav. That means for God's holy name that can only be said in purity and may not be said in vain, the most humble numbers. And therefore, humility is a virtue. How do I put the humility in practice? And I'm going to say today, Be'ezat Hashem, the explanation. When a person stands on his rights, what is he basically saying? It's my money, belongs to me. At that moment, there's an ego involved. At that moment that he says, it's my property, it's my kavod, it's my mitzvah, at that moment the person thinks that he has a certain amount of propriety on this world, that he has a certain amount of ownership in this world, that something belongs to him. In our generation, this attitude is very prevalent. I've said that in our generation, we're very careful in keeping the first 2 commandments of the 10 commandments. The first commandment is Anochi, and the second commandment is Lo Yihye Lecha. The first commandment is I, and because of that, Lo Yihye Lecha, you're not going to have any of it, because it's mine. That's what the ego does. And therefore, it's my right. Why should I give it up? On the contrary, we're vying to take away rights from others, let alone give what's mine. But it's all about me. It's all about I. It's what's coming to me, what belongs to me. The humble person, he recognizes nothing is mine. Nothing belongs to you. You're a creation of God. La Hashem ha'ares umlo'ah. To God is the entire world and all its inhabitants and all that is within. Koneh hakol, like we say in the Amidah. God owns everything. Property of God. My kavod, the glory is to God. My money, what is your money? Borei Olam, it's God's money. It's on loan to you. Even the mitzvot, the good deeds. Who gave you those mitzvot? Everything belongs to the Creator. And therefore, the mevater has to have a certain measure of humility. So at that moment, when the person comes along and says, you take it, at that moment, he has now shown the midah of humility. He shows you that I recognize that there's God in the world, and to him is everything. Therefore, I'm not giving something that belongs to me. On the contrary, I'm showing you at this moment that there's a boreh, and to him belongs all. And all that is within the world. The midah of Vatranut stems from the midah of Anava. And that's what the Chidah meant. The Haim is sitra de Kedusha. Because once a person reaches Vatranut, it'll lead him to the ultimate level of being like Moshe Rabbeinu. Hey, it came to my mind. Was Moshe not the biggest Vatran that they ever lived? Just think, when God came to Moshe and said, you're going to take the people out of Egypt. You know what type of honor that is? To be considered the Redeemer, the ultimate Redeemer, the leader of Klal Yisrael. And with that comes a perk. The one that redeems is the one that's going to give the Torah as well. So it's 2 for 1. And God gave it to him. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu answer? No. I must secede. I must give it to my older brother. What are you talking about? This belongs to you. God gave it to you. And Moshe Rabbeinu was mevater, not on a small speech, not on an aliyah to the Sefer Torah, not on a few dollars. He was mevater on his whole career. God says, that's why you're chosen. Because you're willing to give it all up. You have now showed me your humility. That it's not about you, it's not about I, it's not about what's coming to me. On the contrary, it's easy to give it up when he believes that it doesn't belong to him in the first place. Later on, God tells Moshe, I'm going to destroy the whole nation after they worship the golden calf. And I'm going to make a new nation from you, a better nation, new and improved, like they say. And you're going to be the leader. Who wouldn't take that? Here's a bunch of sinners. They committed idolatry. Here we'll reset. We'll start it again, and probably with a better nation. Moshe Rabbeinu would probably get into Israel. He would probably build the Bet HaMikdash. It's a much better offer. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu say to the offer? I'm not interested. If they don't survive, I'm not interested in surviving as well. Take me out of the Torah as well. I'm being willing to be mevater my entire career. And again, God says, that's why you're chosen. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest. Anav, because he was the greatest mevater. This is what makes our Torah different than the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. You see, our Torah's purpose is to refine us, is to make us better people. These midot, like the Hakamim say, is to mitzaref us, in order to purge us, to make us more proper. The Bill of Rights and the Constitution is a very good document, but it's not to make people better. It's so people can basically coexist, but it's not to perfect the person. The midah vatranut is to bring us to the ultimate level of anavav, humility, something that we can all understand. I found the Gemara, because you're going to say, Rabbi, what's your proof? Very good. That's what you think. You think that the key to Vatranut is humility. Who says? You're one man. I have a Gemara. The Gemara is in Masechet Ta'anit, page 20. Let me read you the Gemara first, because it's a shocker. The Gemara says there was a rabbi called Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. That's the son of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, mind you. He was coming from Migdal Gedor. He just finished learning with his rabbi, it says. He was riding on a donkey. And he was riding by the river. And he was in a good mood, like we would say. The Gemara says he had what's called some gasut. He was feeling good about himself. Let's say it in the nicest way we could say it. He was high a little on himself for a moment. The Gemara says, Gasa alav. Anyway, it says, Nizdamen lo adam ehad. A fellow met him. Amar lo shalom alecha Rabbi. Nice guy. He tells the rabbi, Shalom alecha Rabbi. Velo yahzir lo. The rabbi didn't answer. Amar lo reka. And then he tells him, you empty one. Kama mechoar oto ha'ish. How ugly are you? The rabbi's telling the guy, how ugly are you? Maybe sheme kol bnei ircha mechoarin kemotcha. Maybe everybody's just as ugly as you. Clearly you would get offended by this, and he got offended. Amar lo oto ha'ish. The fellow says, what do you want from me? Lech ve'emor le'uman she'asa'ani. Go to the one that created me and tell him, Kama mechoar kli zeh she'asita. You have claims? Why don't you go to the manufacturer? Go to the one that made me and say, why'd you make me so ugly? Anyway, there was a back and forth in the Gemara. Finally, the rabbi's asking him for forgiveness. He's offended. He doesn't want to forgive him. Finally, they get to the city. They roll out a red carpet to greet the rabbi. The fellow says, this is a rabbi? He says, if this is a rabbi, there should be no rabbis like this. What kind of man is this? What are you giving him respect? At that point, they say, please, you have to forgive him. He's a big rabbi. So he forgives him. At that point, the next stop, Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon goes to the yeshiva. And he makes the following proclamation. And I quote, Darash le'olam yeh adam miyad. Nichnas Rabbi Elazar. Immediately he entered the Bet Midrash. V'darash le'olam yeh adam rach kekaneh ve'al yeh kashe ka'eretz. He made an announcement and said, Rabotai, learn to be flexible and movable and amenable like a reed, and don't be stiff like a cedar tree. like an Eres. Comes our great rabbi, the Ben Ish Chai, the Ben Yosef Haim from Baghdad, and he says, interesting story, but the postscript of the story doesn't make sense. He came into the Bet Midrash and said, be flexible like a reed. What in that story brought him to this moral? If I was in the Bet Midrash, I would have came out and said, be nice, talk nice to people, don't call people ugly, don't call people names. But for some reason, the great rabbi took something out of this episode that we didn't think of. You have to be flexible like a reed, says the Ben Ish Chai, something ingenious. He says, God forbid, the rabbi wasn't calling him ugly because his looks. He says, in the olden days, the custom was that when you saw a great rabbi, you didn't approach him. It wasn't respectful to even say shalom to the rabbi until the rabbi greeted you. And here comes a brazen man that lacks the decency and sees the rabbi and says, shalom alecha Rabbi. So the rabbi tells him, hey, kama mechoar, how ugly is this trait? Do you come from a place that has bad traits like this? And from there led the whole, he was offended. He didn't want to forgive him. There shouldn't be rabbis like this, until he had to beg him for forgiveness. You know what the lesson he learned from this is? You're right. I'm a rabbi and I deserve kavod. The kavod is coming to me. I earned it. But guess what? He didn't give it to you. So you know what he said he should have done? It's okay. Let it go. Not always are you going to get what's coming to you, what you deserve. If you just would have let it go, it would have been finished. But at that point over there, Rabbi Eli Mansour said, oh, you're going out of the derech eretz of respecting? Kama mechoar. And he lambasted him. But then when he realized his mistake, he said, Rabotai, you know what the lesson is? You got to be flexible. You have to let things go over you. You have to let things pass. You can't stand on every kavod and every right that's deserving to you. You can't live like that. But pay attention, if you listen closely, what brought him to this midah? What brought him to this mistake? The language of the Gemara was that he just came from the yeshiva. Besides the fact that he was happy, the Gemara's language was, and I quote again, Vayta da'ato gasa alav. Arrogance. Once there's arrogance in the mix, you cannot be mivatir. Once there's arrogance, then what's mine is mine, and you better give it to me. And don't expect me to relinquish even an iota, even if it's a small good morning that was out of line. I'm going to hold you accountable. And therefore, if gasuta ruach, if arrogance causes a person to stand on his rights, then clearly humility causes a person to forego. That's the sitra de Kedusha. And therefore, it's easy for Rabbi Akiva Eger to give up the speech, to give up the honor. And it's easy for Iyov to give up the money. And it's easy for my Rabbi Chacham Baruch to give up the aliyah. They were working on a higher midah. They were working on a higher characteristic. They were sharpening their midah of humility. They were ridding themselves of the arrogance. And therefore you see clearly that this midah of giving up, this midah of relinquishing, of yielding, all starts from the most important of the midot. The midah of the Yud-Ke Vav-Ke. The midah of Moshe Rabbeinu. The midah of anava, of humility. That we can understand. That we can sell to people that are interested in their rights. That we can sell to modern people and say, why should I give it up? Why should you give it up? The question is, you want to be an arrogant person? You want to be totally consumed with yourself? You're not interested in working on your midah of being anav? This is something of great value in Judaism. But Rabotai, till now we're talking about to be mivater on stuff. Give up your money sometimes. Give up your honor. Something that belongs to you. But sometimes we're in life in situations. And we're in circumstance. Example, we have a spouse. and our spouse is a certain way. That's the way they are. Not to our perfection. Not to our liking. Sometimes people, they annoy us just the way they are. Their behavior, their mannerism. But we're married to them sometimes. Sometimes they're our own children. And we have different expectations for them. We have different, fantasies of what they're going to be. And they are what they are. And it bothers us. Why can't our spouse make more money? Why isn't he more aggressive? Or why is this spouse so much complaining and so on? Nobody's perfect. And as a result of not being able to accept the way people are, we get into fights, we get into mahloket, it causes instability in our marriages, it causes instability in the household, in the workplace. There is a concept of vitur that you have to be willing to accept and even tolerate what the other person is. Now, we're not talking about gross negligence and people that are total deadbeats and doing all sorts of terrible things. Just the idiosyncrasies of people that bother us. Things that we say to ourselves, I cannot live with this. Sometimes you have to say to yourself, I have to yield to this circumstance. And guess what? I think that's what the Gemara that I quoted was hinting to us. That Gemara that I told you when the rabbi saw the man and he told him, Kama mechoar, he told him, how ugly are you? And that's like us. Because we always have claims, why did I get stuck with this type of mechoar and this type of, problem and this type of person and this type of relative and we're always saying, Kama mechoar. You know what the answer? He answered a good answer. Now before I tell you his answer again, let me tell you who the person was that gave the answer. This was not some regular fellow. Tosfot says it was Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyahu HaNavi's answering to all those people that can't accept their lot, that they have claims, that people today say, I have a right to have a husband that's like this, and I have a right that my wife should be like this, and they probably went to a therapist, and the therapist told them, you're right, you have the right to be happy, you have a right to do this. And you know what Eliyahu HaNavi told the rabbi? When you fall into that trap of Kama Mechoar, he told them, Lech le'uman she'asa'ani. Why don't you go to the manufacturer who created me? And that's what Eliyahu HaNavi is telling all of us. Some things, it's a manufacturer's setting. That's the way the Borei created that person. And therefore you have to be willing to mevater on the Creator's will. That's the way he is. That's the way she is. Certain people are what they are. And at a certain point you have to be willing to mevater on the circumstance and to accept it and to forgo. To humble yourself to the situation. That's from Eliyahu HaNavi. Lech le'uman sha'asa'ani. At a certain point you have to say, if God put me in this situation, it's also part of humility. I have to accept it from God, and this is what the Borei Olam wants. This is the way he wanted my family to be. This is my lot in life. This is the parnasah. This is the level. But I want to say one last point. Because you're going to say, why did they choose this topic? There's so many important topics in Judaism. Did the organizers of this event believe that this is the overriding topic that Klal Yisrael has to hear now at this moment over here? Vatranut is another. All the books are filled with all these different concepts. And this is the midah that they cherry-picked out of all the books. And this is the subject they wanted to talk about. Why now? I have an answer to that as well. It's based on the Gemara. The Gemara is in Megillah on page 15. It's a Gemara that's well known. I know today is Tisha B'Av, but let me bring you to Purim for a moment. You remember when Queen Esther invited Haman to the party? So the Gemara is questioning, why did she do that? What was her strategy? Mara ata Esther shezimna et Haman. Why did she invite Haman? What was the reason? Says the great Rabbi called Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya, Ulai yargish hamakom. Maybe God will recognize the Yaseh lanu nes. God who's watching will notice and feel it, what just happened, and a miracle will happen as a result. Esther was trying to bring a miracle. She was trying to effectuate the nes. So she said, you know how we can make a nes? A miracle? Got to invite Haman to the party. How in the world is inviting Haman going to make a miracle? Look what Rashi says. Rashi HaKadosh says, Yargish, God will sense, Sha'ani sricha la'achnif rasha. I have to bring this rasha to the party, v'lizalzel bichbodi. And I have to deprecate myself. The fact that Queen Esther's the queen, you know how much honor the queen gets? And she has to invite this lowly anti-Semite, this Rasha, this wicked guy that doesn't deserve an ounce of respect. And she has to lower her dignity and to invite him and to lift him up and give him all the kavod. Says Queen Esther, when God will see that I was mivater on the respect that's coming to me, He'll make a miracle for us. Rabotai, we are living in very, very serious times. I don't have to read you the newspapers and what's written on the front pages. We all sense it. The high insecurity, what's going on in Eretz Israel, ISIS, and all the terrorism, and all that's going on, and the rise of anti-Semitism that's all around us. And we're all turning to the Borei Olam and we're saying to God, how are we going to get out of this? How are we going to get saved? We're outnumbered and they're all over us. And we're a small nation and it's getting tighter and it's getting more pressure as the days go on. And we need a nes. And the Gemara is here saying Esther was giving us the recipe of nes. You want God to make a miracle? You have to be willing to be mivater. She was willing to mivater the royalty, the honor, and the glory that goes with being a queen, to invite a lowlife into the palace. And when God will look down and say, what? The queen, that everything is coming to her, she was mivater. God will be margish that. You understand? God feels Vatranut. And therefore I say today, this is our national responsibility today to be a mevater. Vatranut brings the Geulah. Vatranut brings Nisim. When a person's sitting at home and all of a sudden he tells his neighbor, no, it's okay, you could borrow my backyard for the party. Hey, that backyard belongs to me. And they're going to dirty it. It's not going to be clean. Take it for the party. Enjoy it. You have to know at that moment over there, you brought our nation a miracle. When a person's mivater in synagogue, no, you take the aliyah. When a person's mivater on his money in a business deal, yeah, it's okay. Give the rest to tzedakah. When a person takes something that belongs to him, whatever it may be, when a person accepts his situations in life and says, I yield to the situation, I surrender to my life, to the uman sha'asa'ani, at that point you must know, Borei Olam is margish that. And when he's margish, when he feels it and he senses it, it activates a button that's called the button of miracle. And God makes this seem for us. And therefore it is in our power. There's a secret weapon, the weapon of Vatranut. The weapon of Vatranut is able to redeem us and save us. And it doesn't have to be on big things. Nobody's there for you to give up all of your blood for somebody. That only very few tzaddikim can reach that level. But to give up petty items, to be willing to forego something that belongs to us. Someone will say, like the rabbi, you owe me a good morning. Give it up, let it go. It's not worth it. Forget it. You didn't take good morning. You're right, you do deserve it. He didn't give it to you. Next. At that moment over there, God says, I felt what you just did. I'm margish that. That's a Queen Esther moment. That's a moment over there that can make great miracles. And therefore, today, we activate the army of Vatranim. Today on Tisha B'Av, which is the day of the Geulah, this is the day of our redemption when we activate Mashiach ben David. On this day we must take out the weapon of Vatranut and not to fall into the trap of what's coming to me, not to fall into the trap, Anochi lo yeh lecha. On the contrary, what's mine is yours. And at that moment, Borei Olam will feel it and he'll sense it. We'll become more humble. We'll become like the Yud Ke Vav Ke. We'll emulate our great leader Moshe. And no doubt, that midat Vatranut, Vitur is the same letters as the word Yoter. In Hebrew, Yoter means more. In this case over here, less is more. Vitur is Yoter. By giving up, you're only bringing an enhancement to our nation. Borei Olam, look down at the army of Vatranim and be margish. And Be'ezrat Hashem, Ya'aseh lanu nes. You will make a miracle for us and redeem us speedily in our time. Amen.